Shabbos Daf Kuf Chav Zayin. Today's email comes to us from Shia Berkowitz from Montreal. He says he's doing everything he can to spread the word about the shir. I personally watch the shir every day on Torah Anytime. Thank you again. Appreciate your effort tremendously. Shia. Thanks, Shia. We're talking about storage of wheat. You're not allowed to move any of it on Shabbos. What is storage? A lesech, which is 15 sa. But there's a trick. If you're stuck on Shabbos and you need to make room, you can walk in and out of the storage and move the wheat with your feet. Reb Chia says, if you never started using the storage before Shabbos, then once Shabbos comes, everything in storage is muktzah. Reb Shimon doesn't hold of muktzah in that situation, and therefore, even if you didn't use it before Shabbos, it's not muktzah. The Gemara is mesupek. What's better? For exertion on Shabbos, is it better to make less trips but carry more weight, or carry less weight and walk more? In fact, there's definitely a shita that says you should walk less on Shabbos, but there's contradiction in the brisa. One brisa says you should carry 4 to 5 boxes of wine and oil when you're trying to remove them from a room. The other brisa says 10 or 15. Which one is it? Perhaps there's no contradiction. We're talking about 4 to 5 boxes. The question is, how many jugs are in the box? Maybe each box consists of 2 jugs, that's 10 jugs, or 3 jugs that would consist of 15 jugs. The halacha is, you're allowed to remove 4 to 5 boxes per guest. So if you have 4 guests, that's 20 boxes. The Gemara asks, is it one person removing all 20 boxes, or perhaps you have to break it up? Each individual can remove 4 to 5 boxes. From Rebbe and Reb Chia, you can't bring a raya. Rebbe and Reb Chia came to a certain place. They were given a base measures to teach, and they saw there's not enough room. They went out into the field, and they made room in the field. They moved a lot of wheat out of the way. Perhaps over there, Rebbe didn't do it himself. Rebbe was a nasi, or it was too much work for him, says Taisus. So maybe he gave it to other people to do. There's no raya that one person could do it all. Rav says, from our Mishnah, you see that achnasas orchim is just as important as learning Torah, waking up early for Torah, because the Mishnah gives us 2 examples of 2 mitzvahs that you do, and that you can make room in the room for it. First one is achnasas orchim, you make room for the guest, and Talmud Torah is second, you make room for a shir. Rav Dimi says, in fact, achnasas orchim is more important than Talmud Torah because it's mentioned first in the Mishnah. One of the famous Mishnayos, we say it every day, but we say it slightly different. These are the mitzvahs that you are awarded, you reap Paris in this world, and the rest remains over for Olam Haba. Which are the 4 things? Kibud av v'aim, gemilas chasadim, hava shalom, creating peace between 2 people, v'talmud Torah keneged kulam, learning Torah supersedes everything else. The question is, we have different Mishnayos that say different things, and the Gemara explains. Hachnasas orchim and bikur cholim are included in gemilas chasadim. Not only that, iyun tefillah, having kavanah and davening, is also considered gemilas chesed. Explains Rashi beautifully. You're doing chesed with yourself when you have kavanah and davening. When you get up early in the morning to learn Torah, or bring your children to school for Torah, that's included in Talmud Torah. Dan lekaf schus, which is also brought in one of the Mishnayos, is included in Hava Shalom ben Adam Chavera, because once you are Dan lekaf schus, you see the good in everything, then there'll be less fights. Once we mentioned Dan lekaf schus, the Gemara brings 3 beautiful stories about Dan lekaf schus. First one is a story about a man who came from Galil. In the Shiltos, this man is Rebbe Akiva. Before he became Rebbe Akiva, he was still in Am Haaretz and he was working. He worked for Rebbe Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, according to the Shiltos, for 3 years. After 3 years, he said, I want my wages. It's Erev Yom Kippur. I want to go home to my wife and child. Rebbe Eliezer ben Hyrcanus says, I don't have anything to give to you. But after Sukkot, Rebbe Eliezer ben Hyrcanus came to Rebbe Akiva and brought 3 donkeys with him. They ate and drank, and he gave him his wages and more. And he asked Rebbe Akiva, what did you think when I said I don't have anything? And Rebbe Akiva said, when you said you don't have money, I thought perhaps you invested in a business. When you said you don't have any fruit, maybe they didn't have any trumas and maasros and you couldn't give it to Am Haaretz. When you say you don't have any animals, maybe you rented it. Maybe you rented your fields. What about pillows? Maybe you were makdish it. Says Rebbe Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, that's exactly what happened. I was makdish everything I had because of my son who wasn't learning Torah, but then I got hataras nedarim, and here I am to pay you back. There's another story, Maisa b'chassid echad, Rashi says it's Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava or Rabbi Yehuda ben Eli, who redeemed a girl who was captured, and he brought her to a hotel and put her by his feet. The next morning he got up, went to the mikveh, and taught Torah. And he asked his students, what were you thinking? He said, perhaps you wanted to save this girl from one of us who wasn't proper, and perhaps you had a carry because of the tircha of the way. He said, that's exactly what happened. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be done yulikav schos, just like you were done milikav schos. And finally, the third story, Yeshua went into a non-Jewish woman, a prominent woman's room, locked the door. Before he did that, he removed his tefillin. He came out, he went to the mikveh and taught him Torah. And he said, what do you think was going on here? He said, well, you don't want to go in with your tefillin to makim tumah. Perhaps this Goya spit at you, and her spit is like a zava's spit, and is matame you. That's why he went to the mikveh. He said, that's exactly what happened. Says the Mishnah, the fact that we said in the Mishnah that you could move truma, what is the big chiddush? And the answer is because this truma is in the hands of Yisrael, and Yisrael can't eat truma. Nevertheless, since it's permitted for a kayin to eat truma, therefore it's not muktzah for the Yisrael. What about dmai? Why is dmai not muktzah? The answer is because dmai is appropriate for a poor person. As the halacha is, you could give poor people dmai, you could give the soldiers dmai, and everybody has the ability to just be mafkir his belongings and become a poor person, and therefore the dmai is roy for him. Ma'aser Rishon, which is the 10% that the Yisrael gives the Levi, which already had the Levi gave 10% of his 10% to a Kayan, but he did not. The Yisrael initially didn't give the Truma, the 2%, to the Kayan. That is the Chiddush. That even though the Yisrael jumped to step number 2 instead of doing step number 1, the Levi doesn't have to go back and give the Kayan his 2% that he's deserving. This is only in a situation that the Yisrael gave the Levi his 10% before it was in a pile, before he did Miruach Hakri. And it was, let's say, still attached to the ground or still in its Shibalim. But once it's in a Kri, once it's in a pile, then not only does the Yisrael get Malchus, but you have to go back and give 2% to the Kain. What is the big Chiddush if the Ma'aser Sheni, which is 10% that goes to the owner, but you have to redeem it, if he redeemed it, of course it's not muktzah. The answer is because he didn't redeem it properly. You have to redeem it and give a fifth. In other words, if there's 100 fruit, you have to give 125. The fifth is milabar after the final number. But at any rate, it's not considered muktzah if you don't give the fifth. The fifth is not ma'akev. Have a wonderful day.